All right, good morning, good afternoon, good night, whenever you are listening to the pod. Thank you for tuning in. If you're someone who's listened before, thank you for coming back. If you're new to listening, thank you for joining. Obviously, with the playoffs going, we got a lot of stuff coming up, a lot of content we're going to be putting out. So this is the first video podcast from the bench. I do everything on my own, so if it takes a little bit with getting stuff up sometimes, that might be why, but I'll try to be as quick with everything. I'll have all kinds of content on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and all those handles are going to be at From the Bench Basketball, and I'll link that in the description. So this episode, what we're going to be diving into, we'll get right into it. This episode, what we're going to be talking about is NBA playoff contenders or pretenders. Who is a real playoff contender? Who is a contender? A team that isn't actually, when they get to the Eastern Conference Finals or Western Conference Finals, is a team really worried about them? Teams that are just immediate no's for me right off the rip. 76ers, Raptors, Heat, Warriors, Clippers, Magic, and the Suns. None of those teams are contenders. None of those teams are, even if they make the Western Conference Finals, unless there's some catastrophic injury that leads to something unforeseen, I don't see anything where we see that happening, where any of those teams are going to propel themselves into that conversation where you would take even $1 of your money and bet on them to win the NBA Finals. And I know betting isn't everything, but it's just a basic phrase to explain like why you would not bet on. Not a chance. This is not happening. There's no world where any of those teams do I trust. Even if Kawhi becomes Toronto Kawhi, I still don't think there's any world where he carries that team. Even if you think about like any team where a player had that great run where they per se carried a team, they still had a great supporting cast with them that allowed them to even carry and take those moments where they were able to take that moment off. And none of those teams, these teams, have a specific player or any even secondary player that I can see them going on a run in the playoffs. So we're just those teams out of the conversation. 76ers, Blazers, Suns, Raptors, Heat, Warriors, Clippers, Magic. No, and no. I'm not going to do 5 minutes on each of those teams because you can do the math. Half those teams are in the play-in. We're not even doing that. So jumping right into the Eastern Conference, we will start with the Detroit Pistons. Are they contenders? No, not yet. Could they be contenders down the line? Sure. But are they contenders right now? No, they're not. I've talked about this ad nauseum, but they do not have a secondary scoring option. They do not have any. You can say Jalen Duren, sure. But a big man that gets you 18, 19 points a game is not a secondary scoring option in the NBA. To me, is someone who falls in that 23 to 24 range of points per game. Not someone like Jalen Duren, and that's not a knock on Duren. Duren is an amazing player, one of the best young centers, and one of the best centers in general in the league. But he cannot be relied upon in the playoffs, especially with his lack of experience in the playoffs, to carry a team as a second option in like the same way that maybe like a Bam Adebayo could as an option on a team like when he was with the Heat with Jimmy Butler. That's not something I can see Jalen doing right now. Could he do that down the line? Sure. But right now, the Pistons as constructed do not have the pieces that are going to allow them to make a deep run against these teams in the Eastern Conference that are more experienced than them, have more scoring options than them, have more ball handling options than them. The only advantage, per se, that the Pistons have is their defense, which is an amazing advantage. They're first in the league in steals and blocks this year, in total steals and blocks. I guess rebuttal you could have to that per se is they're also number one in the league in personal fouls, which is not something you want to get yourself in the playoffs where you're getting into foul trouble or getting into a foul game with some of these teams. And also just a terribly low three-point shooting team, and you're relying on players like Duncan Robinson and Kevin Huerter to be your options from three. And I think Cade can carry a team for stretches, especially in the regular season. But in the playoffs, we rarely ever see one singular player carry a team. And I know that's like a big thing in the NBA where it's like, oh, one player is, yes, they can change your team. But when we're talking about the playoffs, even with Victor Wembanyama saying like, yes, he is a game-changing player, he has the pieces around him that also allow him to be a game-changing player. If Victor Wembanyama was on the Sacramento Kings, I don't care what anyone says. The Sacramento Kings are not making the playoffs. They might be in the play-in, sure, but they're not going to be like some 4th seed, 5th seed, whatever. You need the pieces around you to succeed, and the Pistons just aren't there yet. I don't want to say it's a failure by them because it's not. There wasn't a move out there this year that they could have really like taken a swing and it would have been worth it in terms of giving up assets, everything they gave up and what they got back to actually feel like they would have had a legitimate chance in the East this year. Moving on to the Boston Celtics, finished 56-26 on the year without Jason Tatum for 90% of the year, and after losing Kristaps Porzingis, after losing Al Horford, after trading away Drew Holiday, cap space this, apron space that. but they have done nothing but replicate their offense. It's almost NFL shit where they're like a system where you just boom, you're coming into the system. Here's the offensive coordinator. Here's this, here's the receivers coach. You know what's the deal. The Celtics are a legitimate contender, a bona fide contender in the Eastern Conference and in the NBA. They are a wrecking ball on offense. It's ridiculous. The looks they're able to get on offense when they have lineups out there. For example, when they were playing the Magic the other day, and they have lineups out there where it's Baylor Shireman, Ron Harper Jr., Jordan Walsh, accumulation of players that are all like borderline rotation players. And I don't want to say G League players, that's not fair to them, but like they're bordering on G League players and have been G League players for like a majority of their career. Some of those players, for example, Luka Garza on the Timberwolves, could never get a break, never catch like an actual spot to actually get out there and shine and get some time. You even see when they're out there, it's like this system the Celtics have developed. It's almost like a football team again, where everybody knows where to be. Everybody's in their spot. It's so perfectly well rehearsed. Like even Luka Garza, when he's catching that three right there, he knows exactly where to be. He's right at their spot. They know that they want to get the 2-for-1, and he gets the 3 off right away. Just everybody is on the same page for this Celtics team. And now that you've taken the addition of adding Jason Tatum back, and I think a key part too is when Tatum has come back, the way they've used him in the offense has not been as like that scoring, rebounding, hybrid wing that they usually have used him as. It's kind of been in more of a point forward role, which I think is perfect for Tatum as he goes into the second half of his career and with this injury. But just in general, I think that is the Celtics will play best when Tatum can be in a similar role to what LeBron was on the Cavaliers, where LeBron was a point for in 2017-18, that era. When LeBron was a point forward and like a center on defense, that is what Tatum needs to be. Tatum has the ability to switch 1 through 5 on defense. He's a 6'9" wing who can move his feet quickly, has a strong frame, has long arms. What he has in terms of skill set and like his physical frame and build is unmatched in terms of the NBA. There are very few players built like Jason Tatum, and I think that is what people forget when they have these conversations where, oh, he's not as good as Jokic, he's not as good as Giannis. Sure, he's not. He was a player who was consistently first-team All-NBA and in top 5 NBA discussions constantly throughout that point of his career before the injury. If he can reinvent himself in a way with this Celtics team where Jaylen Brown has come back and put himself up a level as a scorer, has put himself up a level as a playmaker, even if he's not an elite playmaker, Jaylen Brown has still taken a step where you trust him with the ball in his hands at the end of the game right now. You don't have that thought where you're sitting there and thinking to yourself, Jaylen Brown has the ball at the end of the game. You trust Jaylen Brown if you're a Celtics fan when he has the ball in his hands at the end of the game right now. So all the options that the Celtics have too, they have so much depth now with the emergence of Baylor Shireman, how he's emerged as being someone who isn't just a shooter in the corner, but can take assignments on defense and also be a ball handler. It's those little things in the NBA that add up so much when we're talking about who's going to have success in the playoffs. So moving on to the New York Knicks. They are a contender, but with a fat question mark, the biggest of question marks, asterisks, whatever. When you look at the stats, when you look at the raw numbers, this team is a contender on paper. At one point, they were one of the only teams in the NBA up until middle of March, end of March, with a top 5 offensive defensive rating. It was them, the Celtics, and the Spurs. But the eye test is something that, yes, sometimes it lies. With the Knicks, though, I really feel like it does not lie. You see what the ceiling they've reached with this Cat Brunson tandem is only in a year and a half. With the duo, they will only go as far as Karl Anthony Towns is going to take them. We've seen what Brunson can do. We saw it last playoff run. We saw what Brunson was able of doing, and it still wasn't enough to get them to the finals. Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, and OG Anunoby. I don't want to say them as much, OG and Mikal, because it's not as dependent on them in terms of impact offensively. But what Karl Anthony Towns is expected and should be able to do offensively is something that can carry the Knicks. There are very, very few players who can give you what Karl Anthony Towns gives you as a big man, this floor spacing big who can be, when you see all these lineups where teams are trying to make where they're worried about, oh, do we have a player in at the end of the game who can play defense and who can hit a 3, get a rebound, is big man. Karl Anthony Towns can do all of that, and all it comes down to is mental for him. Mental. I know, I hate to say that about a player. I really do. Like, to say that, like, another person, oh, it just comes down to your mentality. But for me with Karl Anthony Towns, it really does come down to your mentality with him. Like, you're a number 1 pick, one of the most talented players in history, one of the best shooting big men ever. Do you want it? Are you going to play defense? Are you going to be locked in? Can you not foul out of these games in the playoffs? Can you not get frustrated in the playoffs when you're not getting calls? You're not going to get calls all the time. That's the point. It's the NBA. It's not perfect. It doesn't matter. You need to be locked in consistently all the time on these playoff runs in the year for the NBA. And that is what will propel the Knicks to where they need to go, is if Karl Anthony Towns can be that all-NBA player that they traded for when they got him, that player that they wanted, that third team, second team, all-NBA player, who is one of the best big men and on pace to be, and still is, one of the best shooting big men of all time. So where they're going to go is dependent on him. We know what Brunson can give them. We know the ceiling of Mikal and OG. Mikal and OG are only going to give you so much. There's not going to be a playoff run where Mikal and OG drop 25 a game, or even 20, I don't think, for an entire playoff run. Karl Anthony Towns needs to be the one who gives them 25 and 12, 2 threes made a game, a block and a half, like 0.7 steals. We're not expecting anything crazy out of you. If we're Knicks fans, we just want consistency and effort and that focus in the playoffs. Moving on to the Cavs, they're hard for me as a contender. They're a legit contender. A lot of people always talk about Harden as a playoff performer throughout his career. And I'm not going to sit here and do a deep dive on Harden's playoff career, but go throughout his career and tell me where he personally has not shown up in the playoffs performing. Him personally. Sure, there's been games where, as with any star player, you're going to have nights you have bad shooting night. I'm saying, has there ever been a moment in James Harden's career where he has never showed up in the playoffs, never given you 100% in the playoffs, never giving you that primary ball handling playmaker who can also score 25, 30 in a night, give you a lot of rebounds, give you a couple steals? There's just never been a moment where he hasn't been that, and he's shown that since he's come on to the Cavs. The Cavs have been nothing but great since he came on to them. I don't want to say they had to trade Garland, but the way the injury situation was going with Garland, how iffy it was, they did need to figure something out, and Harden coming in was the perfect piece. And I think what people sleep on so much with Harden is how good of a defender he actually is. And I hate like offensive rating, defensive rating, sometimes the stats, because I feel like they can be flawed. But when Harden is on the court, his teams have never had a bad defense. There's those moments where, he has bad defensive plays. That does not make you a bad defender. He is a 6'5" point guard / shooting guard with a 6'9" wingspan that essentially plays the 3 on defense. What having Harden out there allows you to do is now you have these lineups where you have Donovan Mitchell, Harden, Keon Ellis, Dennis Schroeder, all on the floor at the same time. On the floor at the same time, and you can throw out a Mobley or Allen as a rim protector, and you can trust that Harden or Mitchell can switch onto those bigs for a second, not a legitimate center, but a power forward for a second and defend them. And that's the thing about Harden that people sleep on so much, especially in the playoffs, is his ability of switchability on defense as a 6'5" point guard shooting guard hybrid, again, with a 6'9" wingspan. He just, what it comes down to for people is like those low lights from back in the day of Harden. I think that's what they have stuck in their head when it comes to how Harden plays defense. He can be a part of elite defense and has been so many times. And again, they're just stuck on the same thing. That Rockets team, that was like such a 3-dependent team. They still had great defenses on that Rockets team. You don't make Western Conference Finals runs and win 60 games in the same conference as the Warriors with a terrible defense, especially with the person at the point of attack, James Harden, as a defender. And like, you can't tell me on any of those teams that James Harden was on, there was necessarily like this accumulation of point of attack defenders could help him, like in the same way Shea has, where Shea has like Casey Wallace and all these defenders Aaron Wiggins, all these defenders off the bench, Caruso, who can help him. Harden has never had that in his career and has always been a great defender. And I just think the Cavs, their 1 through 5 and just their entire roster in general, when it has all come together after the trades, signings, injuries, once it's finally really come together, they have an insanely deep team, especially for the East. Mitchell, Harden, Mobley, Jared Allen, Dean Wade, Sam Merrill, Keon Ellis, Dennis Schroeder, Max Strus, the emergence of Jalen Tyson turning into like a legitimate 6-man for them, and Quan Tomlin, becoming a legit player for them off the bench, a rotation player. They have so many options, and that's with Donovan Mitchell and James Harden as your number 1 and number 2 scoring option. I don't think there's many teams in the league who can say they have a better 1-2 scoring duo than James Harden and Donovan Mitchell. Like, Jokic and Murray, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, if you want to say Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic. There are few teams that have a better scoring duo than that. You're guaranteed 55, 60 points just from their scoring, their assists, the havoc they're able to cause on defense. So I just think the Cavs are built to win this year, and you can even tell that by the way they've spent their $66 million over the luxury tax right now, and this is a team that knows they're ready to compete this year, that knows Donovan Mitchell wants to win this year, and I don't think the Cavaliers are scared of anybody they're playing in the East, regardless of their lack of playoff success in the Eastern Conference. Because we've been seeing the similar thing with the Celtics before the Celtics got over the hump. All the talk about the Celtics and everything like that. You can make the same arguments for the Cavaliers right now. And I mean, if James Harden and Donovan Mitchell are holding up the Larry O'Brien trophy in June and James Harden is the finals MVP, then I think the conversation just completely shifts for a lot of people's careers. Like Mitchell, Harden, Mobley, even Jared Allen. A lot of people have different conversations about their careers after that. So moving on to the Raptors, like they're just a hard no for me. Not a contender. There is no world where I see Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes holding up the Larry O'Brien trophy. A few years from now, sure. Right now, not happening. Not with this team. They're just the most average, basic NBA team. Like, just do enough to win, but don't do enough to lose. Their offensive rating, 15th. Points per game, 21st. Defensive rating, 5th. Defensive points per game allowed, 9th. Just, I don't think they have enough scoring. They don't have enough defense. It just doesn't work in the playoffs with teams like this. The comparison I would make for this team is they're like a version of like the 2016-17 Raptors team with Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver, Al Horford, Paul Millsap. Yeah, I mean, they're a team that like is exceeding their floor because they play hard as fuck. They play great defense. They have smart players, but they don't have players that are going to win you NBA playoff games. There is no world where Jakob Poeltl is on the NBA page the next day because he had 30 points, 25 rebounds, and 5 blocks. I promise you it's not happening, and if it does, I'll give you my entire bank account if Jakob Poeltl leads them on a playoff run that far. So moving on to the last team in the Eastern Conference, the Atlanta Hawks. Not a contender, but close for me. They're right on that edge where if they just had Reece Shea stepped up and took like that next step, or Daniels took a step as a scorer, or even just like was able to hit a couple threes here and there. I mean, nothing crazy, but is able to like a couple threes here and there. Then yeah, I'd be ready to say they're a contender right now. How Jalen Johnson has been playing is at a level that very few players reach in the NBA in terms of points, rebounds, assists, and playing high-level defense as well. Not many players can say they're able to contribute in that level besides someone like really a Giannis or a LeBron type that is that 6'10" wing that can give you 20, 10, and 5 every night and give you a steal and block every night and give you all NBA defense. So I think with a couple more moves in the offseason, the Hawks could get there. But right now, as currently constructed, the Hawks are not there. So that's it for the NBA Eastern Conference contenders or pretenders. Let's move on to the Western Conference. So we'll be short and sweet with the Thunder. They're a fucking contender. They're coming off the finals. Yes, they're a contender. Coming off the finals win last year, 64-18 this year, haven't lost a step, haven't lost a stride. Name the phrase you want to say. J-Dub only played 33 games. Isaiah Hartenstein only played 47 games. They've had A.J. Mitchell turn into a six-man here, the candidate for them, and then traded for Jared McCain. Sure, we'll give him away to you before we make a playoff run. Not a problem. We don't need him. We have plenty of guards, right? Sure. But the Thunder are untouchable at this point, honestly. I tried to find a weakness for them in terms of really like where is someone going to take advantage of them. They have the best big man in the NBA, Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. They have the best player in the NBA right now, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have Jalen Williams, who's coming back from an injury, but also has been resting all year. Now gets to have a playoff run where he'll be one of the only players in the league that's on a team that has playoff experience and is coming off a playoff run, trying to replicate that success, and their second best player got to rest is not the right word, but doesn't have the same wear and tear that other teams' second best players are going to have. For example, Jaylen Brown on the Celtics. He played all year and had to grind his ass off. And I'm not saying Jalen Williams did not grind his ass off. The man was hurt. But point being, he just did not have to have the same wear and tear most players have. And I think the Thunder are in a position where if they're going to be in the finals unless some unforeseen thing happens or an injury, whatever, or Wemby really takes that step and just dominates and brings the Spurs to that next level where they're just dominating these teams in the playoffs and go on a, like has been compared, an Orlando Magic run when they had Shaquille O'Neal, that type of run. So moving on to the San Antonio Spurs, yes, bona fide contender, but with the asterisk of only if Wemby is 100%. Even if Wemby is 90%, 85%, that completely affects their trajectory. That completely affects how I see them as a team. Everything that has to do with the Spurs and where they're going as a team in the playoffs in general, it is all built around Wemby. And I know that is common sense, but that will forever be the common denominator with me. You look at their team, they are not built like a championship team besides the fact of where Victor Wembanyama has brought them and elevated them to. Insanely balanced scoring, great scoring from everyone. They had like 8 players that scored in double figures this year. But again, I won't say ability, but like the gravity that Wemby brings gives players the gravity Wemby has on offense and defense just completely changes how you can play and the confidence you can play with if you're the Spurs. Like, you get trapped when you're driving downhill. If you're Keldon Johnson, I could just throw it up to Wembanyama and boom, dunk it right in. Where they go as a team is just only dependent on Wemby, and I think as long as he is 100%, they can give the Thunder a run for their money. I don't want to say they're going to beat them. That the Thunder are too well constructed and too deep, and Shea is too good to say that. I will go out on a limb and say the Spurs are going to beat the Thunder, but there is 100% a world where the Spurs win in 6 or 7 games against the Thunder, and Wembanyama just has a coming out party where he really is one of these Kareem or Shaquille O'Neal type players. So, Nuggets. Yes, bona fide contender. I know how the year started out for them, how rough it was, but part of that too was integrating Cam Johnson. When the ball is going to the wing, it is completely different when the ball is going to Cam Johnson. When we see how really Michael Porter Jr. was able to show how good of a shot creator and shot maker he was on the Nets this year, you see how that role at first was trying to be replaced on the Nuggets, and then they realized it can kind of be a wing by committee with Christian Brown, Peyton Watson being the main wing, and Cam Johnson. And now they've really, really kind of put the pieces together, have had the number 1 offense in the league all year, and I have complete faith in a group who has 3 players as the key pieces that have already been on a championship team that went to the NBA Finals and won in Jokic, Murray, and Gordon. And now you've added the wrinkle of Peyton Watson taking a huge step as a scorer this year, up like 5 or 6 points a game in scoring. Christian Brown has taken a step back in terms of scoring, but as long as he is that like 3-and-D slashing wing, that's fine. I don't need anything crazy from Christian Brown. This team is built to win and succeed right now and contend for a championship, and the only thing that could stop them is their defense, I think, is the 19th defensive rating. Or I guess I won't say only, but the Achilles heel is their defense. They've never been an elite defense, but when they won the championship, they were at least in like that 10 to 11 range, I believe. But when they won the championship, they were around there. And I don't think they need to have that for a full season, but they need to get up to like that top 6, top 7 defensive rating for a playoff run to win the championship or get to the championship. But regardless, the pieces they have Jokic. They're contenders in my eyes. So Lakers, fuck no. Not a chance. They're not contending without Luka and Reeves. I don't give a fuck what LeBron does. I don't care if LeBron takes whatever it is. I don't know the quantity, how you describe it. I don't care how much human growth hormone LeBron takes or anything. It's not happening. They are not doing shit in the playoffs as currently constructed. Now, if Luka and Reeves were here, that's a different story. They're contenders. They're very comparable to the 23-24 Mavs and how they're built, with Reeves being in the Kyrie role and LeBron being in the PJ Washington role, but obviously a better version. So that's a story for another day, but if they're contenders, if they're healthy. The Rockets, not contenders. I would love to say they are. I love Reed Shepherd. I love Amen Thompson, but Kevin Durant is not going to carry this team, and Sengun is not going to carry this team as a second scoring option. I love Sengun, but I think at the end of the day, he's more of like a 2A or a 2B instead of like a regular 2 scoring option. Can he have moments where he's a number 2 scoring option? Absolutely. But do you want to rely on him to be that number 2 scoring option all the time? Hell no. And they've been relying a lot on Reed Shepherd too as a ball handler. And in the playoffs, I think that's going to come rear its ugly head too when you face a lot of teams with better defenses, with more defenses that can lock down on you and really focus on you. Trap isn't the right word, but yeah, trap Reed Shepherd in situations where he's going to be giving up the ball to KD immediately, and KD doesn't have a second to breathe and get set up. That is a problem that has come up time and time again this season, is who is going to be the primary ball handler for the Rockets? Who's going to be our primary creator? When shit breaks down, who do we go to that we need to reset the offense? And they don't have anyone to do that unless you're giving the ball to 37-year-old Kevin Durant and expecting him to just create in the playoffs time and time again. And I think that only goes so far when you're a team like the Rockets in the playoffs. You can only go so far with that, especially, again, when your second scoring option is Sengun. You have Thompson, who's taken strides, but he's not ready to be that consistent scoring option in the playoffs beyond giving you like 15 to 20 points here and there with great rebounding, great defense, and great playmaking that have all taken strides. But he's just not there as a scorer yet, and I don't think they have the pieces. They're missing the 2 pieces they need are injured, Steven Adams and Fred VanVleet. They're missing that big man who gave them that wrinkle in the season where they could put these super big lineups out with Jabari Smith, Kevin Durant, and Steven Adams all in the same lineup, Amen Thompson in the same lineup. And they don't have that wrinkle anymore. The best offensive rebounder in the league. And then who's the ball handler and point of attack defender they need? Fred VanVleet. So on paper before the year, everything was gravy for the Rockets. But everything that happened, they really did, I'd say try your best, but they really fucking did try their best. There's not going to be anything they do if they have to face a Nuggets or a Spurs or a Thunder once they get to that point. I don't think they can get over the hump versus them, or even if they come into a situation where they're playing the Timberwolves, I don't think they'd get over the hump against them. And moving on to the Timberwolves, they're not a contender for me either. big no for me from them. They have not gelled all year and are the Raptors of the Western Conference to me in terms of just having that defense that elevates you and not really having a consistent offense or anything on offense that you can rely on outside of Anthony Edwards, and then relying on Julius Randle to be some form of himself that he used to be. But I think all Timberwolves fans want that all NBA version of Julius Randle that they thought they were trading for and hopefully getting. But I don't think it's going to happen beyond flashes. And I don't think Gobert has the ability in the playoffs he once has at a rim protector, especially against teams like the Thunder, Spurs, and Nuggets, who have big men that are not scared of Gobert whatsoever. Jaden Daniels has not taken that step we wanted him to take as a scorer. And I don't think in the playoffs the foul trouble is going to go away like he has always had. And when you're a team like the Timberwolves, who has no wing depth beyond Jaden McDaniels, your backup wings is Joe Ingles and Terrence Shannon, who I love Terrence Shannon. But I don't think Terrence Shannon is ready to play big minutes in a playoff series for a team that wants to or would be a contender in the Eastern Conference. So they've just been meh all year, just meh, like 12th in offensive rating, 8th in defensive rating, which is fine. And Ayo was a great pickup over Mike Conley. But the point being, your option before was 40-year-old Mike Conley. Like, you could only go up from there, with all due respect to Mike Conley and all due respect to Ayo. I love Ayo as a player. You could only go up from there with Mike Conley. And it was just, I don't say scraping the bottom of the barrel, but this is a team who traded Cat to get Julius and Dante DiVincenzo to make the team deeper. And all that has happened is they've constantly whiffed on picks, on moves, on everything in terms of building around Anthony Edwards. And this is not a team where, unless Ant's, like, even if he goes on a crazy run where he backpacks, sure, they can get to the Western Conference Finals. They're going to lose. They can get to the finals. They would lose right away, and it wouldn't be a close series. So that's not a contender to me, even if Anthony Edwards ends up backpacking. Right? And I think Ant has that potential, but it's just too much to ask of a player like Anthony Edwards. And he's not some, like, physical freak who can dominate in the playoffs. He's a 6'3" shooting guard. Yeah. So that'll put a bow on that for the Western Conference and Eastern Conference playoff preview, talking about contenders and pretenders. If you guys liked what you heard, follow the pod on Spotify, follow the pod on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube at From the Bench Basketball, and then you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok, same handle, at From the Bench Basketball. So thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. Have a good afternoon, good night, good morning, whenever you're listening, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.